hello everybody and welcome to Size Matters. Thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I want to ask you to just think about one question. You don't have to fill out anything. Just think about how you would answer this. What do Realtors and MLS have that Yahoo and Google will never have? Think about that a little bit and we'll try to answer that question today. Well, real estate listings are everywhere. Just type in the words real estate for sale. Yahoo, 730 million, Google 114 million, and Bing comes in with a whopping 212 million sites. Any way you look at it, that is a lot of real estate information. And just for the record, the first option on every search engine is Realtor.com. It's good to be a member. Now, keep in mind the webinar is going to be recorded, so if you miss anything, don't worry about it. You can go back and get it later. And much of the information is included in your class handout package, so be sure to check that out. Well, there's a lot to talk about with this subject, and square footage is very much like property values, subject to an opinion. Have you seen the latest court case in Oklahoma? You definitely want to check that out, and also the case from Austin, Texas. Square footage is like that 800-pound gorilla, where everybody knows it's in the room, but nobody wants to see it or wants it to see them. Okay, today we're going to look at 4 key points on the subject of residential square footage. I hope you'll find some new information you can actually use at work tomorrow, and also give you some food for thought that'll really make you think about how size or square footage can work in your business. We're going to start by learning why we really need this information and why it is crucial to the credibility of our information system, which is the MLS, and the role that square footage plays in the overall home buying process. We'll also talk about the power of MLS on the entire real estate industry and the power that each of you have over the MLS. This topic, it affects every residential transaction, yet its creation is rarely questioned. Can you remember the last time you discussed square footage at an office meeting? We're all so busy trying to keep up with our blogs or social networking or trying to make bigger and shinier websites, we tend to overlook the basics. Well, I want to bring your attention back for just a little while to this one fundamental part of selling a home. While there may always be differing opinions on the issue of measuring and reporting square footage, size will always play a key role in the valuation and comparison of residential real estate. When Bill Zeckendorf coined the location phrase, well, he was half right. While location always influences value, size influences the comparison of all real estate. In every home, size matters. Okay, let's talk about our first key point. Why do we need square footage, and why do we need accurate square footage? It's a complex question that's been discussed and debated for decades, but the answer is really pretty simple. We often try to avoid the topic altogether, but the reality is hard to ignore. You cannot do a fair or an accurate comparison without knowing the size of the home. It really is just that simple. Any comparison that does not include the accurate square footage cannot provide accurate results. Any experienced agent or appraiser understands what an influence that size has on every comparison. Without size, there is no complete comparison. Let's just say you have side-by-side waterfront listings and one's 2,000 square feet and the other's 4,000. Well, there's a difference in the cost, the potential use or utility, and there's got to be a difference in the market value. That space provides a specific value within the market. Ask any builder if 50 or 100 or 500 square feet makes a difference in building a house. Space creates value. In any comparison of residential real estate, size has to have an influence on the value. While it may not always be precise, size provides the best method we have to estimate the value of a home. Let's say you're going out to meet with a homeowner about listing their property. Well, what do they want to know? The bottom line. How much is it worth? What can we sell it for in today's market? Before you start working on any CMA, you must have one very important number, a specific square footage total, so that you can compare this house to other properties. The very first step in any valuation process should be determining that number. And whatever number you decide to use, the value you create will be based on that specific number of square feet. Change that number, you change the value. Now, I was just reading an article titled The Critical Role of a Realtor. The article lists 190 duties of a professional realtor. Well, when you reach number 7 on the list, it states, I quote, download and review property tax roll information. Number 8 reads, prepare comparable market analysis, or CMA, to establish the fair market value. Well, it's a great article, but it's missing one very important step. The problem is that it's specifically teaching every broker that prior to taking a listing, the only property details you need can be taken from the local tax rolls. Well, that would leave us with a CMA based solely on the square footage listed in public records. Out of those 190 duties listed, the words square footage are never even mentioned. The only time most of us hear about square footage is when there's a problem and the fears of liability get discussed instead of trying to find a solution. And there is a solution, I guarantee you. The problem really starts, though, with the square footage totals in public records. Any CMA that you create based on the square footage listed in public records has a very good chance of just being flat out wrong. I guess there's no easy way to say that, but we all know this happens every day. Maybe it's only 50 square feet or maybe it's 500, depending on the house and design. But there can be huge differences between the actual finished square footage and the totals that are listed in the tax records. We have to accept the fact that the square footage totals listed in public records are not created for our real estate information system, and they're simply not dependable. If you calculate an average price per square foot in any given neighborhood and then apply that average to a square footage number that is wrong on your new listing, there's only one possible outcome, and it's not good for you or your client. Before you can provide an accurate CMA, you must measure the house. Now, before you can provide an accurate CMA, you have to have the accurate square footage. While you certainly don't have to personally measure the house, someone has to measure that house if you want your CMA to be accurate. Let's say the owner interviews 3 agents and 2 of them quickly look around and say they'll be back the next day with their CMAs. Well, the last agent comes in and says, I'll be happy to provide you a CMA, but to do the comparisons correctly, we need to measure your house first. This agent takes the time to explain the differences that square footage totals can make in the CMA process and then also later in the appraisal process. Well, the agent that took the time to measure just made some huge brownie points, and there's a good chance they're going to get that listing. Consumers deserve to know the true size of their property, and their value should not be dependent on details taken from the local tax office. Okay. When you're calculating a value, we look at comparable sales and come up with an average price per square foot. Well, we take that average and apply it to the square footage of the subject property. That simple formula is how values are created across the country. No matter how fancy the CMA, the basic math includes this simple formula, which is based on using 2 numbers, the sales price and the size. All you really have to do is watch any HGTV show, and it won't take long to see this formula at work. One of the first bits of information they display on every house is the square footage. They don't show a range, but a specific square footage total. They're teaching a whole new generation this simplistic price per square foot formula. We, as realtors, we have to practice what we preach, basically. We are the real estate experts, and we have to be the source of accurate real estate information. Part of being an expert includes knowing about square footage. It's part of every licensing process. Now, it really doesn't matter whether you personally pull out the tape measure, just that you are in charge of getting the house measured correctly and providing that information to the MLS, at least in the closed sales data. Well, it matters to your clients And your clients want to know that you care about providing them with an accurate square footage total and how important that total is in valuing their house. Size means money, theirs and yours. It's the first and one of the most important steps that's going to get their home priced right. Now, in this market, it's never been more important to make a strong first impression. The houses that are priced right are going to sell faster and for more money. The best thing you can do for your client is really just give them the facts. You don't make the market, you're just reporting it. The so-called buying a listing and telling the sellers just what they want to hear, or the old let's test the market game, well, it's been tested way too many times and it just doesn't work. It'll only test your patience. So what if you already had a listing and you found out the square footage information was wrong? Maybe 50 square feet, maybe 100. You know if you change that number, you're going to change the value. And with the price of real estate these days, those square footage numbers can make a huge difference. If it's off only, let's say 50 square feet, and the average sales price in that neighborhood is $400 per square foot, well, does that automatically change the value by 20 grand? Well, of course, it's not quite that simple, but it definitely does change the value. Now, we'll talk more about measurement methods, standards, square footage disclosures, and a new solution to the square footage problem in the next webinar here. But the houses with the correct size and price are going to get closed faster and with fewer hassles along the way during the loan process. Knowing what size means to a buyer and a seller will get you in front of more clients and will get you to more closings. A well-placed $400 or $500 in landscaping or getting professional staging help will definitely help you stand out, but the home's price is still the king. The key to getting sold is the price, and square footage helps you to get that price right. Now, just knowing that buyers and sellers are learning more about this all the time provides us with some great marketing opportunities. Why not use size when you advertise? You can use size to get new clients. You can call it a niche, a specialty, call it whatever you want, but using square footage in your ad gets clients to pay attention to your ad and, more importantly, to pick up the phone and call you. Think about that a little while, but there are some great ads being created right now using square footage as a theme. Okay, so why do we really need square footage and accurate square footage? We are the real estate experts. We help determine the value of most people's single largest lifetime investment. Very few professionals control such power over people's financial futures. If you don't think a few $1,000s are important in the overall sales price, get out your checkbook. This is real money out of someone's budget. In calculating any residential value, it cannot be done professionally without knowing the home's accurate square footage. Okay, now let's talk about our second key point. Let's look at a broker's role in the home buying process and two very important elements of this profession, trust and power. And we'll also look at MLS and public records and talk about the power of square footage information that you provide. Well, these two listing examples are taken from Realtor.com. Realtor.com, sorry about that. They both show a specific square footage total. Well, when you look at a listing, do you ever question that number? When you're creating a CMA, we all trust the listing agent's information. Think about that just a minute. The information you use to form your professional opinion is based on the information provided by your direct competition. No other business works like that. After years of selling real estate, when I started working as an appraiser and really looking closely at the numbers in MLS, this problem became more and more apparent. I'd measure a house, turn in the appraisal, and when the house eventually showed up in the MLS as sold, it would have a totally different square footage number. Now, a lot of times it depends on the broker, but some of these differences were really hard to believe. We're not talking about 20 or 30 square feet, but 400 or 500 square foot differences. The numbers often they didn't match the appraisal, and they didn't match the public records. Have no idea where the numbers came from. What was obvious was that the next time somebody calculates a price per square foot number based on that sold price in square footage, it's really going to move somebody's value in the wrong direction. Now, new construction is also an area we need to watch. The plans versus the as-built product, they rarely match. And some of the builders can get very creative with square footage totals as they quickly learn the rules of appraising and comping out. Well, it's fascinating to watch how any information, regardless of who provides it or where they get it, once it's written in MLS, it turns to gospel. Well, is there any one agent or company that's new or maybe just inexperienced in your association? Well, do you trust their info the same as everybody else's? When's the last time you really thought about a square footage total listed in MLS? We all generally use the information in MLS for our comps. If you're working as let's say a buyer's agent, you have to either use the square footage listed in MLS or use public records for the size of the property. Rarely would a buyer's agent go and measure a house prior to making an offer or make any offer subject to the property having X number of square feet. Unless there's an obvious red flag, most of the time we accept the numbers that are available to us. We all trust the information within the MLS. After all, it is provided by the real estate experts. Our biggest danger is in placing too much trust in the square footage information listed in public tax records. Well, our profession requires us to trust our peers. Whether you're working with buyers or sellers, you are going to make a lot of decisions and large financial decisions based on the square footage numbers that are reported through the MLS. Just look at a few closed sales. We all tend to divide the sales price by the square footage, and that's our magic, all-powerful price per square foot. Well, we take that magic price per square foot and apply that to some square footage total for the subject property. This information in MLS, it's like nothing else. Every single sale is going to change someone's value, somebody's budget. But we trust our peers and the MLS, and consumers trust us. That's the way this system works. Consumers trust you because you are the real estate expert. That's one of the reasons the seller called you in the first place, to get professional help and advice. Help which most homeowners believe includes providing them with the accurate square footage of their home. Out of 100 homeowners we polled, 94 said that they expected their home to be professionally measured. Most said they never really thought about it, but just assumed it was part of their agent's job. Most people really didn't know where the square footage number came from, but they trusted their agent to get it and to make sure it's correct. Well, maybe a few of you can remember this, and it actually hasn't been that many years ago, but back in the days of printed real estate books and trips to the county courthouse for information, most of the details about comparables came straight from the MLS. That's the way the system was originally designed and why agents belong to this information service. Very little square footage info came from the tax department. Well, there's a big difference between looking up a property online and driving to the county courthouse, pulling out a printed tax card and making a copy. Let's just say we've come a long way in a little while with the technology. Well, we have to keep in mind the purpose of the county assessor's home inspection. Their square footage information is collected through a, quote, mass appraisal process for tax purposes only. That's it. Mass appraisals means doing every property in the county and doing it in a very short amount of time. The county tax department has no liability to a homeowner or actually in any real estate transaction from measuring any property. The majority of square footage data contained in public records is created from, quote, exterior only measurements, which simply means they do not enter the dwelling. Well, that's mission impossible. Accurate measurements cannot be taken without going inside the house. A basic ranch, say without a garage, well, that's pretty easy to do, and it might not be so bad, but the 1.5 and 2 stories, these contemporaries, and really any dwelling that has a basement, it's an impossible task without going in the house. but we have to remember that precise square footage totals are not important to the tax office. They don't need them. The tax department has no interest in the real estate industry and our comparison process. Assessors provide this information without warranty of any kind and are not responsible for any errors or omissions. They create this information for assessment use only. It was never meant to be used for detailed comparisons. Now, the vast majority of county assessors, they do a great job, but their job has nothing to do with our real estate business. The mass appraisal system was not designed for the creation of specific, detailed square footage totals. It's like a doctor trying to determine if a baby's going to be a boy or a girl without the aid of a sonogram. It's just not possible to always get the right answer. The square footage listed in tax records is based in part on a guesstimate, and that's the way the system was designed. Now, whether it's AVMs or CMAs or even appraisals for that matter, they are all only as reliable as the information they use. And one thing is very clear, large amounts of information does not automatically mean that you have the best answer. Most automated valuation models compare properties based more on the distance from the subject rather than any other criteria. They might compare 1920s, 1960s, 90s, and even new construction all the same. It's all about the distance from the subject property, not the comparability of the dwelling. It's more about proximity, not comparability. Well, AVMs often treat all property like simple box houses on plain vanilla lots, if only it was that easy. Now, don't get me wrong, AVMs can be very useful. These automated valuation models can be very dependable in large, harmonious urban markets, and they also provide national averages and trends. But they all have one common denominator, the square footage total taken from the local tax office. And we're just starting to see problems develop for agents now due to clients who only want to pay the price that they've seen listed by an AVM. Well, it's often a national name that they know, and they believe that's a fair price. While AVMs serve many functions, providing accurate property values is not their forte. And we have to help the public and our fellow agents to understand that the values they see online are based on public records, which are unfortunately wrong more than they are right. Never forget that creating any real estate value requires local knowledge. It always has and it always will. We're seeing that more and more these days with appraisers traveling outside of their comfort zones just trying to find work. Now, we'll talk about that in another webinar. But, excuse me. Public records provide inaccurate square footage information more than you can imagine, and details that are mistaken enough to really change property values. Like 1 to 300 square footage mistakes are common, and 1 to 2,000 square footage mistakes are more frequent than you would imagine. Well, one wrong number can lead to 2 wrong numbers, and this effect could keep going on and on until our whole system could be influenced. Now, our company has tracked square footage totals in MLS and public records for 6 years now and in many different states, and it doesn't take long to find these mistakes. Just ask any local appraiser and they'll tell you about this problem. They know all about it. Well, in the overall public record system, some states use a central tax system and every county's website looks the same. That makes it a lot easier for everybody. But other states allow each county to decide for themselves, and every website might have a different design and use different terminology. One county might call it finished or heated or maybe just total square footage, and another site, maybe one county away, well, they might call it estimated living area, heated finished living area, or one of 100 other names. There is no national requirement for naming or counting this space. It's a hodgepodge of systems with far too many names and titles to be truly sorted, searched, or compared. Well, what do they search for? How many names would have to be included in any national search? And would they all mean the same thing? Well, this list is of square footage totals taken from actual homes that our company appraised, and then we compared those square footage totals with MLS and public records. Well, each home has 3 totally different square footage counts. If you're working on a CMA and you had access to all 3 of these totals, well, which one do you use? Create your own CMA using each of these numbers from this list. Does it change the value? Absolutely it does. Ask any experienced broker what the top 5 questions are in selling a home. Well, they might include price, location, neighborhood, beds and baths, levels, design, style, school system, age, quality, condition. It really does depend on your market. But chances are size is on that top 5 list. And if you ask 10 people about real estate values, well, the concept of price per square foot is a method that they all know. This magic formula, price per square foot, is something that most people have heard, and they certainly all seem to understand how it works. Most people can quote you the price per square foot their neighbor's house sold for 4 months back. If you ask 10 homeowners about their current house, chances are every one of them will know the size. Their parents knew, and so do they. Now, the real significance of creating and communicating this information is its importance to your peers and also the influence that it has on the many other industries that depend on this data. I have to put this in. I just read about another insurance company that is starting to offer classes for realtors. Well, several of the major insurance companies are trying to teach classes on measuring square footage. Square footage affects insurance claims and rates, and they've all seen the differences in the square footage totals between the MLS, public records, and appraisals. Well, it's a national problem that is really costing them money, so much so that they're spending their money to help teach us our job. But aren't we the real estate experts? We should be focusing more attention on this subject rather than allowing insurance companies to try to teach us how to measure houses. The bottom line is that the information which we provide influences more people and processes than we can even think about, than you imagine. It affects so many different industries. Well, every time you report a closed sale, that square footage total is going to change the value of many houses that follow. We all trust the information listed in MLS. We just need to remember that we are the MLS. Okay. That brings us to our next key point, why size and design are so important, and how communication affects every comparison. A good comparison requires more than any one piece of information. Pictures and details are the best method for doing any property valuation. First, let's talk about the size a little bit. Well, size or square footage provides a logical basis for comparison. Think about that. It provides what many people refer to as the currency of real estate, and it is the very foundation of property values. Just like a realtor is the center of a real estate transaction, size or square footage is the center of every valuation process. It plays a central role in comparing every residential property. The MLS, our private database, is considered the single most trusted source of real estate information in the world. The single most trusted source of real estate information in the world. Wow. If you really stop and think about that for a minute, you've got to see the tremendous power and influence that the MLS has on the entire real estate industry, and that you have on the MLS anytime you report a square footage number. Well, if 2 numbers are the most often viewed details within the MLS in any closed sale, the number that you provide as the listing agent is much more influential than most people ever imagine. And we sometimes overlook this issue until there's a problem, and then we deal with it. The court cases in Oklahoma and Texas should get your attention. This one issue is going to have a major impact on the future of the real estate business. Okay, I hope you're starting to see the pattern here. Size is one of the most important influences on property values, and it needs to be provided by the real estate experts, realtors. Accurate property information is what separates us from the Yahoo and the Googles and 1,000 other internet sites which are fighting for position trying to attract customers. If everybody can provide the same information, then we lose one of our most important commodities. As long as we control the property information, then we control the power. The future's up to us. But we cannot rely on the county tax department to be our, quote, source of information. The most trusted source of real estate information in the world, that's us, professional realtors. All right, let's take a quick look at a comparison example. Well, if you have two 3,000 square foot homes, let's say one's 3,000 square feet all on one level, and the other one has a 1,500 square foot first floor and a 1,500 square foot second floor. Well, do you need to know that information to create a fair CMA? Absolutely. In order to do a fair comparison, you need to know the size and the design. Size by itself does not always complete the picture. And a picture by itself does not always provide enough details. The most effective comparison is provided by a square footage total for each level of the dwelling and photos. Photos, including a floor plan for each level, is the way of the future, I promise you. Well, excuse me, most MLS systems, let's see, HUD, FHA, VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and both of the major measurement standards all require the separation of above and below grade space. Fannie Mae's always had the same position on square footage. The appraiser is to measure the exterior of the house, totally above grade, to calculate the finished living area. And this word GLA is something that appraisers use every day, but that definition is not even listed in most real estate books. Since we all share the same comparable information, it would only seem logical that we use the same language when we talk about square footage. Now, while your newspaper ad can show one total square footage for finished living area, in some place, whether it's a drop-down box, a comment section, or some specific field within your MLS, each property needs to be separated by above and below grade space. The absolute best way to report square footage is to provide a square footage breakdown by each level. Whether it's a square footage total or any other information that you report to MLS, whether it's decks, porches, detached garages, whatever, just never forget that your information is going to affect many comparisons in the future. Well, there's a new surge of measurement companies springing up all across the country. Companies like Dimensions Homepage and Floor Plans First. Well, these companies go out to the property, inspect the house, take the square footage measurements and part of the responsibility, and create a professional floor plan. Appraisers are also providing this service more and more. Well, floor plans are part of the online photo presentation and listed within the picture gallery available in the MLS. These plans offer consumers a detailed look at the interior design and allow agents and appraisers to view the layout and the functionality of the design. They definitely allow for a much better house comparison, and they also provide that specific square footage total. While the listing agent is ultimately responsible for any square footage information they provide, these new companies are assuming this role in more and more markets. New disclosure forms, such as the ones available in Colorado, are also encouraging the proper square footage disclosures for the first time. And I'll include a link to that in the handouts. But in many markets, agents have a measurement company or an appraiser or somebody experienced that measures every listing prior to reporting any information to the MLS. Their listing file provides a disclosure form showing who measured the house, when, and for who, and by what measurement method, and we'll cover how to create a proper, quote, statement of square footage in a future webinar. But to me, it's similar to agency. Well, you wouldn't think of delivering an offer without a signed agency disclosure, so why should square footage be any different? Okay. That brings us to our final key point. Let's talk about the real estate experts, realtors. Obviously, there are differences of opinions on the topic of square footage. It's been very entertaining talking to people across the country about how they calculate square footage. The real estate business is all about forming opinions, and this is one area with very strong opinions on both sides. Most people were very willing to bend my ear on this subject, though. But some areas are insistent that you do not need it at all, and that if it's important to any particular buyer, well, they can have it measured. They see square footage mainly as a liability issue. Many areas, they don't want the agent to disclose any square footage total. Like maybe if we don't report it, we can't be responsible for it. Well, maybe. In other areas, they are insistent that you can't do your job without it. How can you offer advice on a value without using size as part of the comparison? We all use size in every CMA we do. It's just a question of where we get the size information. Even in areas that don't report any square footage details, when any CMA is done, it includes using size as part of the comparison. Well, these people are going to argue that it's more about responsibility to the public than any liability from the public. Many areas argue that a professional realtor is required to have this fundamental knowledge to even get a real estate license. And if they're required to have this knowledge of square footage, then consumers deserve the benefit of that knowledge. And of course, most appraisers are going to agree that square footage totals need to come from the listing agent, not the county tax department. Well, this discussion's been going on for the last 50 years, and it's likely to continue. But regardless of how brokers handle square footage, there is no question that an appraisal simply cannot be completed without a specific square footage number for every comparable sale, not a range, a specific number. Other than location, size is the main adjustment in most appraisals. In the current real estate environment, mortgage lenders are placing more emphasis on the precision of appraisals, and appraisers are looking to the MLS for these details. Well, real estate's a business unlike any other, where the better job I do reporting information to MLS, the better job that you can do creating comparisons. We might fight for listing and clients, but no matter what happens, it is our information in the MLS, and information that is created one sale at a time by each listing agent. And those details are going to end up being used by a large number of real estate professionals and affect their professional opinions. The real estate information chain starts with one simple item, square footage. Well, at the end of the day, size matters because it influences property values, just that simple. This data will influence many sales that follow. Once it's sold and written, it's considered a fact. It matters to every agent and appraiser who works in your market. It matters to every home buyer and seller who will have that sale used as a comparable sale to determine list or offer prices or even to have their home refinanced. Your opinion of value is based on information created by this one simple number which we rarely talk about. Yes, size matters. It matters to your peers and your profession. Now, while it's not always 100% accurate, size provides a logical starting point and is the best method to estimate the value of a home and compare it with other similar properties. Well, no matter where I go, whenever I ask a group of brokers or appraisers if they would like to see a floor plan included with every listing, well, the answer is always unanimous. A floor plan for every sale, it makes for better comps. It gives you better information. Anybody that works on comparisons, very often, you have to understand the difference. Whether you're an agent or an appraiser, in a perfect real estate world, we would all want to have a detailed sketch for every listing. Well, the MLS was created so professionals could share their information. Remember that MLS is the most trusted source of real estate information in the world, most trusted source. The key word is source, and we must continue to be that source. If we're the real estate experts and we don't report this information, well, then is the local tax department going to become the most trusted source of real estate information in the world? I hope not. Providing square footage is one of those services that sets us apart from our competition. As long as we control the information, we control the business and the power. It's our choice where and when we share this database. Well, there's no question or debate, and no other group is really trying to compete with us at the same level of service. There's FSBO sites and lots of these mega internet companies trying to take pieces of our marketing pie, but realtors are firmly in control of the home buying and selling process. Remember the one thing that realtors have that Google and Yahoo will never have is property information, accurate property information. The perception of accurate property information is more powerful than anything else we have. MLS is not a separate company that we hired to keep up with our info. Realtors are the MLS, and it's created one listing at a time. We're still in the driver's seat because of our information, and our information source is the MLS. That data is the key to our future success. The trusted real estate information source, which took us 100 years to earn that position of trust, must be provided exclusively by and only available to realtors. We have to understand the significance of that reputation. All right, let's talk just a minute about appraisals and getting loans. Well, without loan approval, we don't have closings. Without closings, we don't get paid. Getting approvals followed by closings and commissions is a very good thing. We all work together towards a common goal, which is making our real estate system and the home ownership process work. Appraisers need the MLS, and the real estate industry needs appraisers to make loans work for their clients. Appraisers and agents need accurate information so they can do a good job. Size influences how every property gets valued. There's only one automatic adjustment on the federally mandated appraisal form. Guess what? Price per square foot. Only the sales price and the size, or GLA, which is above grade square footage, nothing else is even considered. And we'll talk more about that next time, but if size impacts people's ability to get a mortgage, then it should also be very important to the real estate community. Now, 10 years ago, few agents thought about providing video tours with each listing, but now they're considered a normal part of the marketing plan and just an accepted business expense. Now, within the next 5 years, I'm betting that 50% or more of all agents who report square footage information will have their square footage details provided by someone else. It's just a smart business practice. This is a trend that will flourish in the next decade. Real estate's newest niche market, seismologists. How's that for a new word? But with more than 87% of homeowners using the internet to look for a home now, photos posted on real estate websites are arguably one of the most important components to getting a home sold as quickly as possible and for the highest price. Ask a few of your clients and they'll quickly tell you that they like having a floor plan. It helps them to compare properties. It's just one more piece of the puzzle that helps them to know if that property fits their needs. Well, maybe they want the master bedroom to be close to the baby's room, or maybe they want the master bedroom to be as far away from the teenagers as possible. It depends on each client, but floor plans help them to see inside the house and decide if it's worth their time and yours to see the house. The old saying that a photo is worth 1,000 words, well, it's still as true today as it ever was, and maybe even more important in today's real estate environment. A floor plan may be just the one picture that separates you from the competition. Now, in future webinars, we'll talk more about this four-letter word called size, and we'll examine how to properly measure, calculate, and communicate square footage. Measuring square footage is an art. It's not a science, and it's never going to be a perfect system. But can it be improved? Absolutely it can. Well, I hope I've given you a few things to think about. And remember, in every residential comparison, size matters. Thanks for attending, and I hope to see you at the next edition of Size Matters. Okay. All right. Okay, it looks like we're running a little bit long here, and we have some pretty detailed questions. So let me do this. All right, if anyone else has a question, send it to me at sizematters@charter.net. sizematters@charter.net. It might be interesting to see the questions from all across the country here, but give me a few days to look over this list, and I'll just add a question and answers page at the end of the class handout. And I'll also send out a question and answers page to everyone that took the time to participate today. Now, before I sign off, let me leave you with a little Southern wisdom. If money can fix it, it ain't broke. Real estate is a great business, but remember, it's only a business. Live life first, sell homes second. Hope to see you next time.